Not many journeys start in prison and end in payroll software, but today we're meeting the entrepreneur behind one of the most remarkable career pivots in this industry. This is Behind the Button. Hello and welcome to Behind the Button, the podcast that really lifts the lid on what goes on behind the scenes in the world of pay. I'm Laura Murphy, the CIPP's content editor, and I'm joined today by somebody who's been bitten by the software creation bug, not once, not twice, but multiple times, and I have a feeling he's not going to stop there. Welcome to the show, Duane Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with me today on Behind the Button. So we have a bit of a tradition on this show where we ask our guests to leave a question for the next guest, and your one is highly reflective. So your question is, if you could have made one decision earlier in your career, what would you have liked that to have been?
Oh, I guess it depends where my career starts. But I think taking control of my own marketing rather than sort of leaning heavily on other people to do all of that bit for me. Because it was the stuff I'm not comfortable with, and it took me a while to get into that, and I quite enjoyed it and was reasonably good at it. So I should have done that a lot sooner than I did. Okay,
so we're going to go right back to the start, Duane. As you know, the show is Behind the Button, so we really want to get to know the people behind the roles in the world of pay. So going way, way, way back, what were you like as a child and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Newham, in the East End of London, and I don't actually remember a huge amount before I was 11. But I grew up, I've got a brother, a sister, and we were at home with my mum. But by the age of 11, I ended up in a children's home, so did my sister. And from the age of 11 to 18, I was in the social care system in Newham, so various children's homes and foster homes. So a bit different.
So quite a tough beginning there for you, Duane.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't know any different. But yeah, it certainly wasn't the normal family environment, that's for sure.
So what were you like as a teenager? Were there any sort of signs that you'd be an entrepreneur early on?
So you hear these stories about people that were doing tuck shop at school and sort of buying, I know, a multi-pack of chocolate and selling it. I was not that person. And I don't think entrepreneurship ever crossed my mind. I don't think I knew it was a thing. I do remember being called money motivated, as if it was a bad thing as well. So maybe that was an early sign. But no signs of that I was going to go into payroll or software or entrepreneurship, certainly not. And
yet here you are, and we're really glad that you did go down that route.
A windy path.
So you have been very, very open about your sort of beginnings and the fact that you have actually spent time in prison for drug trafficking. So what was happening in your life at that time, Duane, and how do you think you ended up on that trajectory?
So people often ask how I fell into crime. I didn't fall into it. Growing up where I did in that part of London, you're surrounded by it. And if anything, at sort of 17, I was probably the exception amongst my peers because I was not involved in anything illegal. But I had learnt some IT skills and I was actually doing IT contracting. So I really got no excuse for what happened next. I wasn't working, so I didn't really know how to manage the money that I was getting paid. You get paid very well in 1999, this was. But I'd go from having lots of money to having no money. And in a period where I had no money, talking to one of my friends who I knew was involved with trafficking drugs, is someone I'd grown up with. And I thought, this looks like an easy way just to make some money and pay the rent this month. I'd already been to New York legitimately, and this is pre 9/11. And I knew how easy it was just to walk through JFK Airport. So why not do it with, first money coming back and then drugs going out, and got involved with those guys, and it felt like easy money. And I don't think I gave much thought to the risks of getting caught. I probably think, at the time, I thought that if I got caught, it'd be a slap on the wrist and sent back home.
Was there a period during this time of your life, either when you were actually in prison or outside of prison, that you thought something's got to change here?
Yeah, certainly once I was in prison. So what I didn't know is when I got involved with this gang, for want of a better word, they were already under surveillance and had been for months by the police. So it wasn't long after I got involved, I ended up getting arrested in Atlanta, Georgia. I was looking at 25 years there. Got brought back to the UK. I was looking at 12 to 16 here.
Wow.
And we all got very low sentences, largely because of our age. So I got a 5-year sentence here. And I remember being in prison, and I worked my way up to being an orderly, so you got all sorts of perks. And there was a problem one day, and we basically all got threatened with getting sacked from our jobs. And if we got sacked from our jobs, it meant we would have moved from the more comfy cells we were in, the more we use the showers whenever we want. I could go to the library. All that would have changed. And I remember that evening thinking, how on earth did I get in this position whereby this one prison officer has all his control over my life, of literally where I sleep and everything else. And as sort of glib almost as it sounds, I kind of realised that I am the master of my own destiny. You are of yours. I am where I am because of the decisions I took. And I'd taken decisions that had got me there and not really given much thought to what decision I was making. And I think I sit with a lot of people from where I've grown up, is you end up in life wherever the wind blows you get blown around like a leaf, and you end up in all these different situations in your life, not because of anything you've done proactively, because you've had no plan for what you wanted to do. And it was that evening, I still remember it, going, hang on a minute, so that means if I'm a bit more thoughtful about decisions I make and try to be in a certain place, then I can control where I end up. And then I should dying to get out and get on my life. I had another 18 months left of my sentence, so it didn't help.
So prison as a whole, what did that whole experience teach you about yourself as a person, Duane? Because there will have been a lot of time for reflection, I assume, in there.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself and where you want to go in your life?
So that's a good point, that there is a lot of time for reflection. So when you see prison in the films, you see all the exciting bits, and it doesn't make good TV, which is why you don't see that the 95% of the time it's just boring and nothing going on. So yeah, you have a lot of time to think. I think I realised I was quite resilient, and I think growing up in the care system, I built that quality, if you like, and reinforced it by being in prison. I knew I didn't want to be like the other guys that were around me that were older than me and on their third or fourth sentence, or even worse, when they've got kids and you use toothpaste as glue, so they have these toothpaste pictures up on the wall of their kids. And I remember being really grateful that I was doing that on my own, doing my time on my own, and wasn't in their situation.
Yeah. So. Moving on from the stint in prison, when you came to start over, what were the first sort of steps that you took? Because it can't have been easy going from that situation to completely starting over in your life. So what were those first initial steps that you took to rebuild your life?
So I finished my sentence at Ford Open Prison. So I've done most of my sentence at Brixton in London, and then Camp on the Isle of Wight, which is a really not very nice prison. It's now been shut down. But Ford was a lot easier, and that was about resetting you into the community. So you'd be out for a few hours at the weekend. You had a lot more freedom there. You could even work outside the prison in some circumstances. So through that, I reconnected with my now wife. So by the time I was released, she was 3 months pregnant and had a baby on the way. And I was then in danger of being that guy, right, of watching my baby grow up while I'm in prison. And there's a lot of pressure to get involved with a lot of that kind of thing. But towards the end of my sentence, some volunteers from the King's Trust came in, and they talked about what they did. Part of what they do is the enterprise program, helping people from underprivileged backgrounds to start a business. And this is before The Apprentice, before Dragon's Den, and I really don't think I'd thought about starting a business. I thought maybe you need a license, maybe you definitely need to have gone to Oxford or Cambridge, that kind of thing, but apparently no. We now know this, but I certainly didn't then. So not only was I allowed to start a business, they would help me do it.
Yeah.
So when I got out of prison, December the 9th, 2002, I immediately got in touch with the King's Trust to get help to start as a one-man web developer. And
I know that there's sort of a landmark coming up for the King's Trust this year, isn't there?
Yeah, 50th year.
Yeah. And they do some incredible work.
Yeah, I had a King's Trust a lot, definitely. And I spend a lot of time doing get involved with very fundraising stuff for them, getting high net worths to donate money, but also getting involved with kids from similar backgrounds to me, and talk about what the trust does for them. For them, I think it helps a lot to hear someone that's from where they're from or talk to how they talk, rather than somebody in a suit that went to Oxford that they can't really relate to. So I really enjoy that side of things. Yeah,
and I love that you're giving something back, Duane. That must be a really rewarding feeling for you as well.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to.
Yeah. So aside from that, when you were starting up, did you face any sort of barriers or judgment because of your background?
So the whole reason I started the business as a one-man web developer was because I knew I wouldn't be able to get a job because I had a big black hole on my CV, so no one's going to give me a job, so I didn't even try. And what I like about business, so early on I didn't put my background out there, I kept it quiet, but so I also left school at 15 with no qualifications, so I've got no GCSEs, and in business nobody cares what your GCSEs were. Nobody cares where you worked before. All they care about is, can you do a good job at the price that you said you'll do it? And if you can do that, then you're fine. So that really helped. So that whole background thing wasn't really too much of a problem for me.
I remember at school they gave us this folder. I can't remember what it was called.
Record of Achievement.
Yeah, and they told me that would be instrumental in my life throughout my career, and I literally don't think
your mum's got it on the top of the wardrobe somewhere.
I don't know where it is. That shows you how important it is. But so how did you then find your way into the accountancy and payroll world? So
I'd started as the web developer. I'm selling my time by the hour to other people. And again, via the King's Trust and various courses they put on, someone was explaining the difference between selling a service and selling a product. And if you're selling a service, the only way you can make more money, being money motivated again, you can either increase your hourly rate, you can only do that so much, or you can hire a bunch of other people and resell their time, which didn't sound very appealing. So I like this idea of building a product and selling that. So I started thinking about what I could build, and then realised I'd already built it, but didn't think anything of it. So for raising my invoices, back then you had Sage or QuickBooks, and not in the current way they look now. There was early 2000s, they were very different. Download, very clunky. So I got them both started up and raised an invoice, and the next month I had to do another one. I couldn't remember how to do it because this software was so clunky and felt like it was designed for accountants and full of jargon. So I'd already built myself something very quick and dirty just to raise invoices and mark them as paid or not paid. And that's all it did. So that I realised I could turn that into a product, because I was talking to other King's Trust businesses and saying, what are you guys using? Not because I wanted to sell them that, because I wanted a recommendation on what I could use. And everyone was in the same situation. They were using Word docs and a spreadsheet to track their invoice. So I gave them a copy of that. So I ended up growing that into what became Cashflow with a K. So being a web developer, it made sense for me to build this on the web rather than a downloadable program, which at the time nobody else was doing. So we'd have people say, I've just installed your software and I can't find it on the start menu. We had some of the computer magazines would get in touch, we want to put your software on our cover, can you send us it? It's like, well, it doesn't work. So I had to send them a little file that would open our website. And that, became Cashflow with a K and an uppercase F, which I was always quite precious about. And that grew and grew into quite a large, everyone knows Xero now. So we were Xero before Xero was Xero. In fact, they, early on, they looked at buying us, and there's this New Zealand company I've never heard of that wanted to give me equity, wanted to give me shares instead of cash. So I said no. I've not done the maths to work out how much money that would be worth today. Yeah.
The reason you got into sort of the accountancy and payroll world was to make something really complex quite simple for people that weren't necessarily well versed in accounting and payroll.
Yeah, something for business owners to use that made sense for them. So a great example of how Cashflow was different to a lot of other products is your accountant always tells you to keep your receipts when you buy stuff, so you can claim it back. So in our software, if you buy something, that part of the software, you have invoices, customers, suppliers and receipts. And to accountants that look, whenever they look at that, well, that's wrong, it's a purchase invoice. Like, yeah, but what business owner ever talks about a purchase invoice? It's a receipt. So it's all about having the language and the usability for business owners to use.
Yeah. And at the start, Duane, did you have any sort of good knowledge of software development? I know we were talking beforehand and you were telling us all about how you understood code at the age of 12, which is amazing. But yeah, what sort of was your experience of software development before you actually went out and did it?
Yeah, so when I was 13, maybe 12, 13, there'd been a falling out between social service and the education department over who was paying for something, and for reasons I still don't understand, even since doing a subject access request and getting all the paperwork, I was not in school for a period of time, and I was meant to be being taught at the children's home. Wasn't allowed to watch TV between 9 and 3, but they're not teachers, so they didn't know what to do with me. And I remember in the dining room there was a box, a ZX Spectrum, still in its box, and a manual for it. So I suggested I could maybe learn what this thing's about, and they were happy because it meant they didn't have to teach me how to tell the time, whatever it is they thought I needed to learn. So yeah, I got the ZX Spectrum out, set it up with the manual for it, and learnt to program from that. So yeah, I learnt programming very early on.
That's incredible. I know that certainly my brain would look at something like that and probably malfunction.
It is about the type of brain, definitely.
Yeah.
I've got a brain for computers and logic and all that kind of thing. It just clicked for me.
So is there anything about building payroll software that people who haven't done it yet might underestimate?
Yeah, the amount that goes into it. So if you're building any other type of product, if you're building accounting, well, I started with just invoicing, and that was fine. People could use that, and then we added more and more, and it eventually became an accounting product. If you look at HR software, you can do something pretty basic, and you can release that as what in software terms we call an MVP, a minimum viable product. There's no such thing in payroll. Just because no one on your customers' payroll is pregnant today doesn't mean they can afford to not have SMP built into the software. Everything needs to be there because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So there is no quick way of building payroll software. There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And actually, so I started building Staffology because I sold Cashflow. I was then advising a few companies, and two of them really needed web-based payroll that had an API so that they could be driven by software, not just by humans, and it didn't exist. So that's what I thought. I remember sitting, I can still picture it, sitting in the chair, not too dissimilar to this, with my laptop, thinking I did a technical challenge, and started building a payroll engine. And it's only when I looked up a year later I'd built this whole thing. But if at the outset I'd looked at what was involved with building it, I don't think I'd have had the guts to do it, because I'd climbed this big mountain of, I don't know, all the benefits that you need to do. And great, I must have broke the back of this now. And then I look at, okay, so what have I got to do next? And then you see attachment orders and how complex they are. And it felt endless, but it kept me busy.
I love that you've touched upon that, because that is the whole ethos of Behind the Button and what we do at the CIPP, that payroll is blooming complex.
Oh, it really is.
I think people outside of the industry don't always realise that.
Yeah.
And almost you have to be very reactive to people's life circumstances in payroll. You mentioned there about SMP. All sorts of different things happen in people's lives, which then needs to go into payroll, and then their pay needs to reflect sort of that change in their life.
And it's not optional whether you run the pay run at the end of the month and pay everyone. You have to, and if you get it wrong, you're like you say, you're messing with people's lives. So it's scary. It is. Yeah.
But you obviously like a challenge.
Yep.
So we're very glad that you made Staffology. I think you've again touched upon something that we talk about a lot, which is the experience of people that are being paid as well. Like you said, you can't just say, sorry, we're not paying you at the moment because we've got to deal with this issue in the system. Payroll needs to observe stringent deadlines because it impacts people's lives at the end of the day.
Exactly. Multiple people. You can't just say we've got 100-person payroll, so it's affecting 100 people. It's not. It's their families. It's their children. It's everyone else behind that. So there's a lot of people that your lives you're involved with.
So when you were first setting up software more generally, how did you win your first customers?
So the first customers were other King's Trust businesses, going to networking events, and so doing stuff that doesn't scale. So it wouldn't have made sense, and it made no sense then financially, to spend all this time going physically to a place, talking to people, get them to use the software, spend time showing them how to use it, seeing how they react, answering the phone and giving them one-to-one support, all for 10 quid a month. It makes no financial sense. But early on, you have to do things that don't scale to get to that point. Later on, it became 15 quid a month, but it still didn't make sense to do that. But by then, you've got systems in place, and it's very different. But those early customers, you just do stuff that doesn't make sense financially to get them in.
Yeah. So from those very early customers to then having a business that you subsequently sold, when did you start thinking, right, this has got serious acquisition potential?
So it was a few years into having built the business. And again, it's via the King's Trust. So by this time, I was established as a business. It was going fairly well. And the King's Trust would ask me to speak to other people, especially in the technology space, that are potential donors. And a dinner I went to at the Gherkin, I was sat next to a guy called Michael Jackson, who was had been chairman of Sage. And he sat down, looked at my name card, said, "Oh, nice surname, not sure about the first name." We chatted a bit over lunch. And the following day, his PA got in touch and said he wanted to see me. Went in to see him, and he asked me lots of questions. So this must have been when the iPhone 3 came out, because it was the first time I've seen someone with an iPhone. He had an iPhone. I was well impressed. But he asked me lots of these questions, and then just says, "I want to give you £1 million for it." I was like, "Sorry, what?" He said, "I want to buy the business for £1 million." I said, "Well, it's not for sale." And it's that cliche of, "Well, no, everything's for sale. It's a question of how much." And he got his iPhone out and tapped away on the calculator and went, "Well, how much would you need?" And I said, "Well, it'd have to be at least £2 million." And he went, "Yeah, I can do that." I'm like, "Are you serious offering me £2 million for the business?" So I then went and spoke to, so I had a mentor, Lord Young, David Young. He mentored me for growing the business and was a good friend over 20 years, and spoke to him about it. And he said, "Look, if you want to take that offer, you can do. But alternatively, how about I lend you some money so that you've got some cash, and then we focus on growing this business and you pay me that back later." So quite early on, I thought, okay, this is worth some money.
Yeah.
So
I love that you had Michael Jackson offering you £2 million.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Yeah. So you mentioned them mentoring, and I just want to tap into that a little bit. So how did you find the mentoring experience? Do you think that was, massive in your journey with the software process?
It was huge, but it's really difficult to replicate. So the best mentor-mentee relationships I've seen are ones that come about naturally, rather than you being assigned a mentor. It's more that there's somebody that you're dealing with that is older than you, got more experience than you, not necessarily a million miles ahead either, just a little bit further down the road from you. And if you get on well and they're willing to support you and give you time and answer your questions, that develops into a mentor-mentee relationship. And that was huge for me. I wouldn't have had anything like the success I've had if it wasn't for Lord Young's help over the years. He died 20 years to the day after I got out of prison. So yeah, December the 9th, 2022, and spoke at his remembrance service, the service that the family put on for him. Immediately after David Cameron spoke before me, and Cameron was talking about Lord Young's time in Number 10, because he was Cameron's enterprise advisor, and made a comment about they were the only two with their own offices. Everyone else had open plan. And Cameron said something about, but apparently there were ex-cons in and out of David Young's office. And I was the next one, I was like, "How was that ex-con?" And he looked like a tomato, bright red. He had no idea. So.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So as we now know, you have sold Cashflow and Staffology.
Yeah.
How did it feel to you emotionally to sell something that you had built completely from scratch? How did that feel?
So I remember doing the deal and before it was signed, and talking to the guys at Iris and Sue, who was the head of HR at the time, about how we're going to announce it to my team, because I had 40 people working for me at that point. And she was saying that obviously it's your baby, and I said, no, my baby's at home, this isn't my baby. So I didn't get that emotional about it, but she was saying that before they've had where the founder breaks down when they're trying to tell the same, but I didn't have that emotional attachment to it at all. So I didn't really struggle with that. If anything, the emotional bit for me was after I sold and sitting in a room on my own and transferring a big lump of cash to the trust. I was the first ever to be a beneficiary and then a patron, and transferring that money and having this weird feeling, and it was pride. And I think it's probably the first time I'd been really proud of myself that I'd got into a position where I'd had this help from this charity and then been able to give a lot of money back to them. So yeah, I was more emotional about that than selling the business.
So looking at current day now, so you've recently built some practice management software, Sodium. So what inspired that move? Why did you not just stop creating software? Why did you continue?
The simple answer is because I enjoy it. The slightly longer answer is because I'm no good at golf. So I tried golf. I don't want to sit around and do nothing. Staffology came about because I was bored. And I remember my wife saying at the time, if I sold it, what would I then do? Because I started because I was bored. So I need to be doing something. I like producing stuff. I love building software. I like interacting with users and seeing them wowed by what we're building. So it was really a case of deciding what I was going to build rather than if I was going to build something. And when you look at the landscape of software for accountants, you've got two choices. You can either buy point solutions that are pretty good, something that's really good for proposals, something that's really good for tax returns, something that's good for company secretarial, something that's good for payroll. But they don't talk to each other very well. Or you can buy a suite of products that are all pretty average at best, and even sometimes they don't talk to each other. So it with Cashflow, that was something that needed to exist. It just didn't exist, and I felt like it should. Same with Staffology, and this is the same thing. It feels like there needs to be a suite of products that can stand independent on their own 2 feet have been really good, but also work really well together. So the first part of that has been practice management, which we're just about to, so it's on public beta now, but we'll be releasing that in the next month or two. And then moving on to other aspects, other solutions that fit around it, whether it be CIS, company secretarial. So I'm going to enjoy the journey. So it's a long journey. There's a lot to build.
So we talk a lot at the moment about AI, and sorry, I am going to talk to you about it now.
Yep.
So is there automation and AI built into Sodium?
There is, yeah. And it's we've been really lucky that we started building that as AI was a thing, rather than a lot of the products out there. AI has been bolted on top, and it's this rainbow-coloured button normally that with a big picture of a magic wand or some magic sparkles. Whereas we've been able to integrate throughout the product as we've built it. So silly little things like if you add a new service, all you do is you type in a service name, click next, and it's automatically populated a service description, some suggested pricing. We've got something called pricing factors that you might want to adjust your price up or down X% based on different factors. So if it's bookkeeping, what software do they use, quality record keeping. Just by you typing in a monthly bookkeeping service and clicking next, all of that's done for you. And we've tested it just by putting in something random like window cleaning, something nothing to, and again, it does it correctly. So that's one of the ways we use AI in there. Writing proposal content. So if you add a new service, you can click a button and you can say this is the typical terms and conditions or the typical proposal from other services, and based on that, it will generate one for your new services. So, and that's how we use it in the product, but separately we're using it to help us build the product as well. So yeah, it's so fast moving and so fascinating and helpful and scary, because I don't know where this journey ends with AI at the moment.
So a lot of people listening or watching today might be thinking, I've got an idea and I really want to do something to solve a problem that I'm currently facing. What advice would you give to them? What steps would you advise that they take?
So a lot of people in that situation don't take any steps because they are waiting for everything to be lined up perfectly. If we're here in London, if we were going up to Manchester and you waited for all the traffic lights to be green before you left, you're never going to leave, right? So my advice is always just to do something, start, progress it a little bit. Don't wait to have all of the answers. You don't need to do more research. You don't need to wait until this happens. Just do something to move it forward a little bit, because it's all these little steps that add up.
And are there any sort of resources that you'd recommend for people to use just to give them that starting point?
AI is a great one to help use as a sounding board. Be aware that it's going to sort of quite be positive about your ideas. So you need to tell it to be a bit more critical, and talking to people that are in the industry and that have got the problem that you're trying to address. So what's been helpful for me is I was solving a problem where I was a potential customer. So for cash flow, I didn't need to talk to customers to work out what I needed. I knew. Same with the payroll software, I knew what that needs to look like to work. So yeah, if it's not building something that you need personally and you're not the customer, find some customers as a focus group to help you build it. You'd be amazed how willing people are to help you for no fee, just for the enjoyment of helping you create something. There's a lot of very helpful, nice people out there in the world.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot at the CIPP. We think particularly paid professionals are really helpful.
Yeah.
You just look on LinkedIn, somebody puts a problem on there, and within an hour they've got about 20 replies, all of people trying to help.
Yeah.
So I think it is just remembering that there are good people out there who will help you.
Yeah.
You did make me laugh when you said about putting stuff into AI and it just coming back really positive.
Yeah.
Because it does seem to love everything and everyone.
Does. Yeah, but also it depends what you use, because ChatGPT from OpenAI is designed to keep you engaged and keep you using it, whereas Claude from Anthropic is actually designed the opposite way. It keeps trying to shut down the conversation that you're having with it. But if you just use it blank and go in and type into the box and get going, you're not getting the best out of it. You need to configure it properly to get the best results out of it, and part of it is telling it not to do that to you.
So I know you said that developing and creating Sodium is part of a long journey. What do you think is going to come after Sodium? Because let's be honest, Duane, you are going to build something else.
Probably, yeah. But if you asked me after Cashflow what I was going to do next, I certainly wouldn't have said Payroll. I mean, it was a running... I remember after selling Cashflow being really relieved that I would never have to debug another VAT return. So the whole thought of going and doing something as complex as Payroll, no way. And it was a running joke in the boardrooms of a couple of companies I was advised that I should go and do it. So I'm just not doing it. So then after doing Staffology and selling that, and I would never have guessed that I'm going to do what I'm doing now. So to ask what I do after sodium, I have no idea. I really hope for this one it can be a business I can keep for many, many years, that just generates a nice income. I can work it when I want to, and we've got great products and happy customers, and stay independent.
Yeah. So, sorry, I want to go back to the payroll software again. So you will have worked with pay professionals when you were developing that product. What was your experience of working with people in the industry?
As you said earlier about how helpful people are, so I was really surprised that people are willing to spend all this time with me to explain how stuff works and what should be where, and give them that feedback. And then when you find people that are on that junction between payroll and software, and there's quite a few people out there that can explain it in technical terms, how helpful they are in explaining this stuff is amazing. And actually, I don't think they get enough credit, is HMRC and the documentation that's there for what you need to build. That was unexpected and very, very helpful. Looking
back, what learning from prison do you still apply in your day-to-day life?
A lack of fear of really what's the worst that can happen. I think that idea that if you don't have a plan, then you end up as part of somebody else's plan, and they've not got much plan for you, and you could end up somewhere like that. I think it's stuff like that, really. That whole, I've said it before, that whole master your own destiny. It sounds so cheesy and glib, but we all really are, right? We're where we are today as a result of the actions we've taken over the last however many years we've been on the planet.
Yeah, and do you think that lack of fear that you mentioned has spurred you on to keep creating new things when you see problems arising?
Yeah, it helps with the whole unpredictability of being in business. I mean, both in children's homes and in prison, you could be told, right, pack your bags, you're moving, and everything's got to fit in 2 bin liners and you're off. And that would happen in children's homes and in prison. And when you get comfortable or accepting that level of not knowing what tomorrow brings, there's a lot of that when you're in business. You don't know if it's going to succeed. You don't know what tomorrow's going to throw at you. There's so much uncertainty, but yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Coming to the end of our time together, Duane, I just wanted to ask you, do you think people underestimate the fact that they can turn their lives around if they want to, regardless of the situation that they're in?
Yeah, definitely. So I saw it so much and still do, that I can't do this. If I go and get this job, then I lose my benefits. I'm actually getting less money doing this job than I am on benefits. And that's a reason to stay where you are. I mean, it's that kind of mentality that other people are holding you down, or other phantom mystical organisations that you can't touch feel are holding you down. Even if they are, what you can do is stay there and let them hold you down. So yeah, I think we really are, it's all in our own power to go and do what we want to do.
And only one tip, if you could give one piece of advice, what would you give to someone who is looking to turn their life around?
Have a plan. And that plan doesn't have to be perfect. You don't even need to stick to the plan. But if you've got no plan, you're jumping all over the place. If you've got a plan, a direction of travel, if you know where you want to be in a year, you can then break down, okay, what do I need to do as the steps that get there in a year? And that's some sort of map out of where you are, really. And even if you change it as you go along, but at least you've got a direction of travel.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Duane. I do have one final favour to ask of you, if that's okay. So Could you give me your question that you'd like us to put to our next guest on Behind the Button, please?
If you had to talk somebody into going into your industry and your role that really didn't want to, how would you sell it to them?
That's a brilliant one. Thank you for joining me today, Duane.
Thank you.
What a truly inspiring episode. You know what to do next. Hit subscribe or follow Behind the Button on your favourite podcast player. And if you're watching us on YouTube, tap the like button, drop us a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've got any questions you'd like to put to our guests, or guests you'd like us to talk to, email behindthebutton@cipp.org.uk. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.